As you probably know by now, Canada is officially opening a consulate in Greenland today after the island was the subject of a tense standoff with the United States a couple of weeks ago at Davos. You're seeing right now an Inuit delegation from Canada has just landed in the country a couple of hours ago. Beautiful to see, flags waving high. The opening of the consulate follows a similar move by France that happened earlier this week on Thursday. So joining us for a closer look at why Ottawa has moved ahead with this is Adam Lajeunesse. He is the chair of the Public Policy and Governance Program at St. Francis Xavier University. Welcome to your morning.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
The consulate, as we understand, has been quietly operating for a couple of weeks now. The official opening is happening today. We've got Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand there, as well as our Governor General, Mary Simon. What does the consulate do, and how does it help us to have a consulate there in Greenland?
Well, keep in mind, this consulate was actually planned in 2024. So this isn't an immediate reaction to the craziness that's coming out of the United States these days. What this was originally intended to do was to strengthen North-North relationships. So the connections between Canadian Northerners and, of course, Greenlanders, and to build out a better relationship with, one of our two immediate neighbors. Now, from the perspective of global geopolitics, the timing couldn't have been better. What this also does, coincidentally, is it signals Canadian support for Greenlandic sovereignty and rights of self-determination, and solidarity, of course, with the Kingdom of Denmark. So the timing really was fantastic.
Yeah, of course, we remember this announcement that happened December of 2024 when we first announced that there would be a consulate landing there. Interesting timing to me is that it was around the same time that President Trump started talking about Canada as a 51st state. Tensions, we know, between the United States and Greenland have just started to simmer down. Given that we are drawing more attention back to Greenland again this morning, how do you think that it will land? Why is this timing important now?
Well, like I said, I think the timing was fantastic. I don't think it was necessarily planned. I think it just worked out very well. But I think what all of, let's say the entire Euro-Atlantic community, save the United States, is now worried about in Greenland is demonstrating to the United States that there is a broad support for Greenlandic self-determination. The Europeans and NATO support Greenland's right to determine its own future. Now, the consulate is a part of that. It fits into a bigger picture. But looking outside just that consulate, you're also seeing NATO deployments of troops into Greenland, very small token deployments. But this sends a really powerful message that Canada, the Europeans, we're dead serious about maintaining sovereignty in Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark.
It's not even a month ago that tensions were ratcheted so high with this back and forth between, the leaders in Denmark and in Greenland and with U.S. President Trump. So now that we're here, February 6th, what does the threat look like to the landscape there right now? Because President Trump, I think people will remember, walked out. There was sort of a quick scrum press conference where he said there's the framework of a deal with Greenland, and it kind of seems like we haven't heard a lot since.
Yeah, I think you're asking the wrong person. You're looking at a strategic studies expert. You should be talking to a psychologist. Broadly speaking, you ask the strategic studies community, and we scratch our heads because there is no rational basis for anything that is happening in Greenland. The conversations about rare earths, about continental defense, about Chinese and Russian ships or threats to Greenland make absolutely no sense. So the real problem here is Canada, the Europeans, NATO writ large. We're trying to find a way to work with the Americans, even you could use the word appease the Americans, but nobody really knows what needs appeasing. Nobody really knows what Donald Trump is looking for in Greenland, because everything that has come out of Washington over the last year, it just makes no sense.
Well, the one that doesn't get talked about a lot, of course, so there was critical minerals, of course, there was defense, but the reasoning that doesn't get a lot of conversation, but we've done before on this show, is the potential for a trade route and a Northern Passage trade route. When things are confusing, I often just go back to following the money, and sometimes there's clarity there. So in 2025, our government pledged $6 billion for an Arctic radar system, as well as nearly $420 million to bolster the year-round presence of armed forces in the north. This is a huge change in military spending in Canada. Now we're opening the consulate. If there's no threat of military confrontation, why would Ottawa be putting this much money and this much focus on the north now and on Greenland now?
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that most of our Arctic defense focus is not to defend the Arctic. It's to defend the South from threats coming through the Arctic. So that new over-the-horizon radar, it's actually going into Ontario. Now, it's going to be looking out over the Arctic, but it's watching for Russian hypersonic missiles coming through the Arctic, heading for Washington or Toronto. Likewise, Greenland. I mean, the Putuvik Space Force Base in northern Greenland plays a really important role in continental defense. But we, meaning the Canadians, NORAD, the United States, have everything that's required already. So what beyond what is already there, the Americans feel they require? Again, that's a bit of a head scratcher, and no one's 100% sure what that is.
Chair of the Public Policy and Governance Program at St. Francis Xavier University, Adam Jeunesse, great to speak with you this morning.
Thanks. Good to be here.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.